Welcome back to the Island 54 Devlog. Today, we'll add some chickens to my game. Last week, I finished up on my terrain generation arc by getting my terrain generator to create an effectively infinite world. Today, I'll be starting on a journey to get mobs into my game. I'll start by adding chickens. I ran into a few technical hurdles this week, so while I didn't get as far along as I had hoped, I'll still call it a win because I learnt a lot. First up, I'll show you how I got a chicken into my game. I had two approaches here that we'll call the hard way and the easy way. Next, I'll go over my attempt at adding AI to the chickens. And lastly, I'll show you a demo of what things look like now and talk a bit about what's coming up. I started by making my own chicken. Step 1 is to find reference images. I try to be pretty careful about correct licensing and had troubles finding something I could definitely use in a YouTube video. There are lots of CC BY SA images around, but I wasn't comfortable with the share-alike provision on the license despite many people suggesting that it's fine. Fortunately, I happen to have some live chickens, so I grabbed a couple of photos, cropped out the backgrounds, and got to work. After a fair bit of trial and error, I got something roughly chicken-shaped. Having watched some videos by Sebastian Larg, I had a pretty good idea of what lay ahead. I wasn't entirely happy with my model, but pressed ahead anyway, otherwise I was never going to get the chicken finished. I started modelling the skeleton of the chicken so I could animate it. It was at this point I realised I didn't fully understand inverse kinematics, and the whole task was getting too big for me. It was time to find other options. I went on over to the Unity asset store to see what kind of things are available there, and found a decent number of appropriate assets. One particular chicken caught my eye. It was pretty cheap, looked good, and had a nice range of animations available that I could try out in the store itself. I'll include a link to this asset in the description. $10 and no more than 2 minutes later, and I had a chicken in my world. Next, it was time to work on the AI. I wanted my chickens to alternate between idling and wandering. If the player got too close, I wanted the chickens to retreat away from the player. I also wanted the player to be able to use the chickens as a source of food. There are 3 things I needed to accomplish all this. I needed a script to control the chicken's behaviour. I also needed an animation controller to cause the chicken models to be animated appropriately. And finally, I needed to integrate Unity's AI navigation components to allow the chickens to navigate the terrain. I started with the animation controller. I added idle, wandering, and dying states. I put in 2 parameters to control the transitions between these states. I then put in the transitions. The chicken starts idle. If the moving parameter is true, then it enters the wandering state. From there, if the moving parameter becomes false, then it returns to the idle state. From any state, if the chicken is dead, then it enters the dying state. This is where I ran into my first frustrating technical problem for the week. I just couldn't set the motion parameter of the animation states, no matter how hard I tried. Loading the chicken in the animation preview window seemed to work just fine, but the motion parameter wouldn't budge from its default value. After a lot of trial and error, I eventually found the solution. I needed to duplicate the animations from the original model to allow me to edit their properties. I then put the inspector into debug mode to clear the legacy flags and make sure all the other parameters looked right. Now, without the legacy flag set, I was able to change the motion parameter. I have no idea if this is something that is broken on just this asset or something that needs to be done on all legacy animations, or if there's some problem I'm masking that's going to bite me later. But at least for now, it seems to work. I got started on my script. It keeps track of an idle timer, which is randomly initialized. Once that expires, it chooses a random location within the current chunk and sets that as a wander target. Once it reaches that target, it reinitializes the idle timer, and so on. Trying it out in play mode, and you can see the chicken has a subtle idle animation, then starts walking on the spot once they choose their wander target. Since I haven't implemented movement yet, it won't currently ever get there. I added a kill verb to my interaction system and tested that out too. I modified my scatter generator class to support non-deterministic scatter. While I want trees to generate deterministically as a chunk gets loaded, I want the distribution of chickens to be more random. I use a second random number generator with the current time baked alongside the chunk coordinate to achieve this. I was beginning to get a little concerned about getting this episode out on time at this point, but was still confident I'd get everything out on time if the integration with Unity's AI system went smoothly. I figured it couldn't be all that hard, could it? Every tutorial I found out there assumes a mostly static world or uses the NavMesh Builder Components experimental package. I had to do all my NavMesh baking dynamically, since precisely none of my world is loaded at edit time, and I couldn't for the life of me find the NavMesh Builder Components package. It has apparently been renamed, but following the latest installation instructions didn't work. I even tried upgrading my Unity editor to 2021.3 and still had no success. If anyone knows what I'm doing wrong here, I'd love to hear from you. I had a shot at getting the NavMesh built without the experimental package, but eventually had to give up. It's not really the end of the world for me from a system design point of view though. I intend to start porting most of my client-side entity logic back over to my server soon anyway, So Unity's AI features weren't a long-term solution for me. I instead hacked up my own solution. I started with the chickens just taking a straight line from their current location to their wander target. This resulted in the chickens clipping through the terrain or hovering above it. I added a collider and rigid body to the chickens, and this started working much better. Although the chickens sometimes behaved weirdly when they got to their destination, I tweaked the collider and movement code a bit, and this seemed to do the trick. There are still some edge cases where chickens get caught on other entities or rotate over as they approach their target, but I still needed to edit this video and was running out of time. This meant I didn't have time to implement having the chickens flee from the player. But at least now I have chickens in my game. They alternate between idling and wandering, and you can kill and eat them. My intention from here was to work on aggressive mobs, but there's been a lot of interest in getting players into the game, so I'm going to focus on getting things ready for external playtesting for now and get back to mobs later. So next week I'll be back to working on the server and a bit of infrastructure to support a limited external release. Which brings us into some housekeeping. I'm still some weeks away from being ready, but be sure to stay tuned for details on how you can be involved. I know some people have asked that I retain single player or self-hosted mode, but I want to really focus on MMO aspects of the game, and that's going to be too challenging for me while also maintaining self-hosting capabilities. I will be building out the server infrastructure on a containerization layer so that I can more easily reverse course if needed. I also haven't forgotten about my plan to launch an interview series. I had a much bigger response to my call for participants than I expected, and I've not had the chance to get back to everyone. I will be following up with everyone though, and hope to get that kicked off soon. I also have the big 1k milestone approaching fast at the moment, and expect to be launching a Discord server as we hopefully reach that target in the next couple of weeks. So I hope you enjoyed this episode despite the slower progress, and choose to give it a thumbs up and hopefully subscribe. If you missed last week's episode, or want to binge the series to date, then there are cards on screen now. And until next time, happy game developing.